At the time of recording this video, we're at about 3/4 of the way through Star Fox Adventures on this channel. Now, I personally love this game. I've had a lot of fun playing through it again. Like, I see the issues it has, sure, but by and large, I feel like it's a decent game in its own right. However, without spoiling the ending for all two of you who both care and don't know what happens at the end, there are a couple of pretty significant plot details coming up that I feel like Star Fox Adventures in and of itself doesn't really do a good job of contextualizing on its own. Specifically, I'm referring to the composition of the Star Fox team itself and the overall state of the world, or I guess star system in this case, at the time of Adventure's story. So originally this video started out conceptually as just a playthrough of Star Fox 64 for the sole purpose of adding context to the last section of Star Fox Adventures, because Star Fox 64 is Star Fox Adventures' direct prequel. But as I started getting things ready, I realized that even playing through Star Fox 64 doesn't fully set the groundwork for what's coming up in Star Fox Adventures on its own either. So I started branching out even further to figure out exactly what information we would need to fully lay the groundwork out to make the end part of Star Fox Adventures fully make sense. And that leads us to the homunculus that this video has become. So here's our itinerary. What we're going to be doing today is we're going to start by looking at Star Fox 64, since again it's the direct prequel to Star Fox Adventures. Admittedly, this is also where we'll spend most of our time, but we're also going to fill in some other lore by looking at the tie-in comic Farewell, Beloved Falco. And lastly, we're going to take a very quick look at the Star Fox Adventures game manual. Hopefully, all of that together will give us all the information we need for the last little bit of adventures to not give us storyline whiplash. Now, I'm purposely going to dance around spoiling the ending of Star Fox Adventures since we aren't done with it yet, but we are going to be discussing some details that are relevant to it as they relate to the larger plot line of the series as a whole. So let's start out by talking about the gameplay of Star Fox 64. 64 is a rail shooter, and this is the gameplay that most people associate with Star Fox as a whole. Star Fox Adventures was a huge departure from this, which is part of the reason why some people don't like it. It's a totally different genre of game than the established Star Fox series was leading up to it. The level progression works on a branching path system. It's actually kind of similar to Shadow the Hedgehog's level path system in some ways, and yes, I'm bringing it back to Shadow. That's all this channel is, man. It's just different forms of Shadow all the way down. Rather than being related to factors that can be reasonably weaved into story decisions like in Shadow, Star Fox 64 level progression and paths are determined by either score, finding secret paths or exits, or interacting with certain things in the level. Now, we see an example of each of these in the path that I'm covering, but as an example, for a level that we won't see, in Katina you're basically doing a timed boss fight. If you take the boss out in the specified time limit, you're gonna go to Solar, but if you don't take the boss out in the specified time, you go to Sector X instead. Looking at the game from a story perspective, this game serves as the very beginning of the Star Fox game chronology. Sort of. I mean, the series has been retconned and rebooted like twice now, but for simplicity's sake, this serves as the earliest game in this particular timeline. Star Fox 64 even comes with its own little exposition piece right before you start the main game, which I'll cover now, and I'll go into a little bit more detail in some spots than the game does. Most Star Fox games take place in the Lylat star system, the stereotypical good guy techno-utopia planet that acts as the capital of the Lylat system is Corneria. This is where the majority of our characters are either from or operate out of. A Cornerian scientist named Andros basically went rogue on bioweapon research and either purposely or inadvertently, we're leaning toward purposely, almost caused a mass extinction event on Corneria. Obviously the survivors didn't appreciate that, so General Pepper of the Cornerian army exiled Andros to Venom, a desolate, seedy planet on the opposite end of the Lylat system. 5 years after Andros' exile, General Pepper notices some signs of bioweapon activity on Venom. Obviously he suspects Andros, so he sends out a mercenary group to investigate. This mercenary group was the original Star Fox team, consisting of James McCloud, Fox's father, Peppy Hare, who James befriended in the Cornerian Military Academy, and Pigma Dengar. Now, Pigma ends up being a little bitch who has been paid off by Andros to betray Star Fox once they arrived on Venom, possibly with some outside help. We'll touch on that later. This leads to James and Peppy being captured. Now, I don't know how he managed it because there are literally no details about it, but somehow Peppy escaped and returned to Corneria to tell Fox and General Pepper what had happened. At this point, James is presumed dead. Fast forward a few years, Andros has literally amassed an army and is trying to take over the entire Lylat system. General Pepper, realizing the Cornerian army alone would be overpowered by just the sheer size of Andros' army, calls on the new Star Fox team to help. Now, Fox established the new Star Fox team. Peppy joined it basically immediately because he wanted to lend his experience to Fox and basically take him under his wing as sort of a father role sort of thing. But Fox also recruited Slippy, who is a talented inventor and mechanic, and Falco, an ex-gangster who is renowned for his piloting skill. Now, Falco is notably absent from Star Fox Adventures, and we're going to be covering that over the course of this video. In fact, Falco in and of himself is one of the main reasons for this video's existence to begin with. So ultimately there isn't too much story in the game itself. There is dialogue here and there, but the plot is relatively basic after the exposition. There are, however, some plot related things that I wanted to draw attention to in this game, and I think the red path works the best for setting up the story going forward. So let's take an abridged trip through the red path of Star Fox 64. So we start off the game on Corneria, where most of the dialogue is basically just your teammates telling you how to play the game, going over the basic functions, yada yada yada, so there's really not that much to talk about in the early portion of the level. There is, however, the option to take a secret path out of the level, which we need to do to get onto the red path. To find this secret exit, what you do is you fly through the arches in the water portion of the level. As you're doing this, Falco makes a passing remark that I feel warrants some analysis. Now all he says is,
"Pretty smooth flying, Fox."
But this single line shows that Falco, despite being the team's ace pilot, considers Fox to be at least around his skill level, which means a lot considering how cocky this dude is. Anyway, after flying through the arches, Falco will say that he's found the main target you're looking for and will lead you through a secret tunnel behind a waterfall a little further up, which, of course, it's behind a waterfall. But even finding this secret area can be read as Falco needing to find a way to one-up Fox after commending his piloting skill. Being the most skilled pilot is so important to him that he has to do something to deflect away when Fox seems like he's proving himself. Now maybe I'm reading too far into that, but I feel like this little scene shows us a lot about Falco's character that becomes relevant a little later on. Anyway, story stuff aside, we follow Falco through the secret path and eventually end up at the boss. Since this is the first level, he's pretty easy to take down, so we deal with him, have a cheesy 80s cartoon moment.
Who are you guys? We're Star Fox.
And then get out of there. Second on the red path is Sector Y, so out here all we're doing is helping the Cornerian forces to secure the space front around Corneria after having helped secure Corneria itself. Now this level also has two ways out, but this time it's based on score, so to stay on the red path we need to get at least 100 points, which sounds intimidating, but it's really not that hard to do considering the sheer amount of enemies in this level. Apart from that, there's really not too much that happens story-wise, so it's just another fight through the enemies, get to the boss, kick his ass, and peace out. But side note, this boss does have the most iconic yell of all time, and I would be doing a disservice if I didn't include it in the video, so...
Cocky little freak!
Next up is the planet Aquas, so this level is a little bit different mainly because you're at the bottom of an ocean in a weaponized submarine. The rest of the team stays in the Great Fox, which can apparently act as a boat, but to my knowledge never does this again in the entire series. Story-wise, this level really isn't significant. The only real plot is that there's supposedly a bioweapon somewhere here, and bioweapon equals likely Andross activity, but I did want to show it off a little bit just because it's really nice aesthetically anyway. After a bit of swimming, you come face to face with the supposed bioweapon, which appears to be Andross's, giant clam. So Fox makes short work of it and moves on to the next planet, Zonus. Now, weirdly enough, Zonus is one of the most significant levels to the larger plot of the series, but it's not necessarily because of the level itself. There are two ways out of here as well, but this time it's related to the searchlights that are poking up out of the... water? Liquid shit? I don't know, whatever this stuff is. To stay on our path, we need to destroy all of the searchlights. Literally all of them. You cannot miss any of them. More important to the story than the searchlights is the fact that during this level, we are joined midway by Katt Monroe. Now, we're never actually told why she's here, and as a kid, I just assumed she was just some random cameo with no real relevance, but in the context of what we're looking at today, she's actually extremely important. Katt is a member of one of the gangs that Falco either used to run with or possibly was the leader of. That point I'm not 100% sure of. So obviously Falco is surprised to see her at first, but there isn't really too much back and forth between them in the level itself. But if you'll allow me, I'm going to break chronology here to look at a section of the Farewell Beloved Falco comic. Now this little scene that I'm showing you takes place before the formation of the Star Fox team and implies that there were possibly some romantic feelings between Falco and Katt. Specifically, Katt would have had feelings for Falco, and I can't blame her, to be honest. What? To be clear, they were never actually romantically involved, which is a discussion for another time, but either way, we can at least say with a good amount of certainty that they were very, very close back then. So much so that Katt would mean a lot to Falco regardless of romantic involvement. So obviously seeing her again would be significant to him. Anyway, back to Zonus. So we fly through some barges and at some point here, Katt kind of just leaves without saying anything to anyone. Eventually we come up to the boss of this level, who is just straight up a pirate, by the way. We bomb the ever-loving hell out of him, he goes down with his ship and does the second best defeat yell in the entire game in my opinion. Falco wonders where Katt went for a second, and then we take off for Sector Z. Sector Z is a little bit of a weird level. You're immediately put into all range mode or combat mode, and it seems like you're going to be just doing some dogfight combat, but then Andross's forces start using pay-to-win strategies and start shooting off missiles toward the Great Fox. So your goal becomes essentially playing tower defense, shooting down all of the missiles before they hit the Great Fox. As a kid, I remember having a really hard time with this, but fear not, small idiot me. If you're following the red path from the beginning, Katt will randomly show up to help you here too. During the level itself, she doesn't say too much, but she does help you take down some of the missiles. Now, I should mention that this level does have two ways out as well, and it's pretty much just a good versus bad ending scenario. Basically, one of the endings is failing and having one of the missiles hit the Great Fox. For our purposes, we are going to clear out all of the missiles and not let any damage come to the Great Fox at all. Once the missiles are dealt with and the Great Fox starts moving out, Katt does say something that isn't too important lore-wise, but I felt I should include because it sets up a later plot point absolutely beautifully.
You owe me, Falco. You're on your own. Good luck, little man.
And with that, we regroup and head out into Area 6, the area of space directly in Venom's orbit. This level is a final push through actual hordes of Venomian fighters, satellites, missiles, capital ships, literally most anything you can think of. And it all takes place against the backdrop of Venom getting closer and closer as you go through the level. It is really, really cool visually. Like, it reminds me a lot of the opening scene in Revenge of the Sith, and now that I'm saying that, I'm wondering how it took me this long to make a Star Wars connection to this game. Anyway, this is another level that doesn't do too much story-wise. Andross does contact you as you get a little closer to Venom and sort of threatens you a little bit, but it's nothing too relevant to what we're actually talking about today. I do accidentally kill Slippy here because of overly aggressive button mashing, but other than that, things go pretty smoothly. The boss even goes down pretty easily despite me not being able to see its health meter, which is the only real consequence for losing Slippy. That out of the way, we head right into Venom. Now, since we took the red route and came in through Area 6, we basically get to the surface of Venom right at Andross's doorstep. But before we can ring Andross's doorbell like revenge-motivated salespeople, we're interrupted by Starwolf. For some quick context here, remember how I said in the very beginning that Pigma might have had some help betraying the original Star Fox team? Well, Wolf O'Donnell, Starwolf's leader, may have also had a hand in that situation. Wolf had always been a rival to James and is now continuing the trend by being Andross's answer to the Star Fox team. Wolf recruited Pigma, presumably after the whole betrayal thing, Andross's nephew, Andrew, mainly because Andross wanted a direct line to Starwolf, and Leon, whose voice is just absolutely beautiful. I love it so much.
Let's see how you handle our new ships.
Now, I just explained that they sound badass and everything, but the problem is I ended up kicking their asses in less time than it took me to say all of that, so... Anyway, once they're all out of the way, Fox goes hero mode, slams his ship through two pillars, your mileage may vary, and dive bombs into Andross's base alone.
Fox!
Fox travels down Andross's lengthy hole, anyway, and eventually finds himself face to face with the big guy himself. Now, I never understood why he's a giant disembodied head and hands as a kid, but the actual lore is that Andross experimented on himself during his exile, turning himself into... Well, once you take out the hands and shoot his face a bunch of times, you see what he actually turned himself into.
Only I have the brains to rule my life.
So, Andross, you show your true form.
So to make a long story short, Fox gives Andross an intense brain scan with his ship's lasers and formally diagnoses Andross with terminal ligma. As one does in situations like this, Andross responds to this news by triggering a nuclear explosion.
If I go down, I'm taking you with me.
Don't ever give up, my son. Father? Follow me, Fox.
Even as a kid, this last playable part with James leading Fox out of Andross's base was so cool, dude. Now, the implication is that this is either a ghost or a hallucination or something. James himself is still gone story-wise, but either way, I've always loved it. Plus, it gives us this line spoken.
Never give up. Trust your instincts.
So we escape the explosion and rejoin with the rest of the team, minus Slippy. My bad, dude. And that pretty much wraps up Star Fox 64. I would recommend watching the credit sequence for this game if you get a chance, because the music is really good and there are some nice sequences with the character models doing stuff afterward, but I really don't have time to show it all, and there really isn't anything lore relevant here anyway, which is the main reason we're here, so check it out if you get a chance, but I'm gonna skip over it here. So that pretty much gives us the in-game story from Star Fox 64, but there is one little piece of additional information I want to give here. I took the hard route, or the red route, because it deals with significant points that I wanted to talk about, but that still leaves like 9 or 10 levels that we didn't see. This is part of the replayability of this game, but it's important to note that out of game, there's a case to be made for the canon story being that the Star Fox team actually visited every level. Now this isn't too relevant unless you're looking for it, but I felt I should mention it here for just like continuity's sake. So now we're going to move on to the out-of-game lore that we're going to cover, which is the Farewell Beloved Falco comic and the manual for Star Fox Adventures. Now, both have information that sort of tries to bridge the gap between 64 and Adventures, but some information, specifically the reason for Falco's departure, does sort of contradict between the two. I should clarify here that I take Farewell Beloved Falco to be canon over the Star Fox Adventures manual in terms of the reason for Falco being absent. I would normally consider the more recent information to be canon, but to be fair, I'm not exactly sure whether Star Fox Adventures or Farewell Beloved Falco released first. Farewell Beloved Falco was commissioned by Nintendo and originally released in the Nintendo Dream magazine, with the publication year listed as 2002. So I would assume that means it came out in an issue of Nintendo Dream sometime around the Japanese release date of Star Fox Adventures. I'm assuming maybe issues 73 through 77 somewhere, but I cannot for the life of me figure out which issue exactly it came from because 1, I can't read Japanese, and 2, these magazines aren't digitally archived anywhere, or if they are, I can't find them. So I'm not really sure what effect that has on canonicity. I would normally vouch for whichever one is more recent, but I can't say for sure which that is, and Farewell Beloved Falco is more detailed anyway. So we're going to look at Farewell Beloved Falco first because I guess in the Star Fox timeline it makes chronological sense to cover it first anyway. I'm not going to cover the whole story in detail, I'm mainly just going to give a summary and show some of the panels relating to the major plot points. I would recommend giving this a read if you're interested. It's really not long and both the story and the art are really nice. I'll link to both the original Japanese comic, which is hosted officially on Nintendo's website, as well as the unofficial English translation. 4 years after Andross's defeat, the Star Fox team has been keeping busy doing pretty much fuck all, honestly. Andross was the main source of conflict in the Lilat system, and since he's out of the way now, Cornerian Army subcontracted mercenaries really aren't getting a lot of work. The team randomly gets a distress transmission from Katt. Now, 2 things here. 1, she initially only calls out for Falco, and 2, this is the beautiful setup I was talking about back in Sector Z. Katt is not only putting out a distress call here, she's cashing in the favor that Falco owes her. Anyway, Falco, being hot-headed as he is, decides to head out alone to the planet Titania, which is the source of Katt's transmission. That pretty much sets the main plot in motion, so I'm going to start skimming pretty heavily here. Falco helps Katt and her gang get out of danger, and afterward, Katt reveals the reason that they came to Titania to begin with is that they discovered that a Captain Shears of the Cornerian Army had taken over Andross's bioweapon research and that they had tracked him there. There's a little bit here about Katt's personal growth, which Falco reacts to a little bit. I only mention this because I think it becomes a little bit relevant later. Meanwhile, Fox and the rest of the team decide to go to the official route and touch base with the Cornerian Army base on the planet, which is led by... oh, now that's going to be a problem, isn't it? Unsurprisingly, this leads to a misunderstanding that results in a dogfight between Falco and Fox. Fox gains the upper hand at the last minute, but both survive the fight and return to their respective corners to patch themselves up. Once again, Falco's skill relative to Fox's is in question here. At this point, Fox begins to catch on that Shears may not be 100% trustworthy, so he sends Slippy into Shears' base to see if he can dig up any information. While Slippy investigates, Katt contacts Fox and is understandably pissed off that Fox attacked our bird boy. After talking it out a bit, both sides realize that they've been played by Shears. And now the icing on the cake, Slippy is able to send back the data that he was able to gather from Shears' network just before he drops off the radar. It turns out that Shears is not in fact working on creating Andross's bioweapons, he's trying to recreate Andross himself. I feel like I've seen this plot point before somewhere. Now, I really don't want to go into a lot of detail about the ending because I really think you should read this comic if you're at all interested in the Star Fox storyline, so to wrap this thing up pretty quickly, Fox goes in to rescue Slippy, has a confrontation with Shears which devolves into a fucking sword fight. Again, please read this comic. Meanwhile, Slippy tries to destroy the in-progress resurrection of Andross, but ultimately ends up releasing him. Outside the base, Katt and company face off against one of Shears' pets, which they almost aren't able to do on their own, but Falco swoops in at the last minute with his R-Wing and takes the thing out. Back inside the base, Fox's confrontation with Shears becomes a confrontation with Proto-Andross, I guess? But the whole event is cut short by Slippy and Fox blowing the entire base up with the Landmaster. So things are pretty well wrapped up, but instead of coming to the victory party, this is where Falco parts ways with the Star Fox team. Now, he doesn't say why, but I want to examine what we've seen so far, and then I think we can put forward a pretty good guess as to the reasoning. We know Falco's piloting skill is key to his sense of self. It's literally the reason he's with the Star Fox team to begin with. But both in 64 and in this comic, we see that he's maybe not quite as far above Fox as he thought he was, which calls a major part of who he believes he is into question. Somewhat related is that Falco has his connection to his past life sort of in the form of a single person, Katt. His past comes back to him randomly on Zonus, and now over the course of this story, he sees that she's growing as a person and running the gang and developing relationships, while Falco remains kind of just where he's always been. So these two things equal a Falco who's sort of watching life pass him by while he's questioning whether the entire linchpin of his personality is even true anymore. He's leaving now because in simple terms, he's kind of having a bit of an existential crisis. Of course he's gonna bury it and he plays it cool and doesn't really say anything, but would it really be out of character for Falco to hide something like that? I don't see any version of reality where Falco goes up to Fox and says, hey bro, I'm gonna have to take a leave of absence for my mental health. No, Falco piecing out on his own terms is totally on brand, and this is my guess based on what we've seen in 64 and this comic as to why Falco chooses to leave. But we're not quite done with Farewell Beloved Falco yet. We do have a time skip of another 4 years, making 8 total since the events of Star Fox 64. Once again, Fox and the remaining Star Fox team are kind of just bored and broke and drifting in the far corners of the Lilat system when they happen upon a planet that appears to be tearing itself apart, and that pretty much catches us right up to the beginning of Star Fox Adventures. So there is a plotline bridge that connects these two games and explains how the Star Fox team went from spacefaring mercenary work to Fox being pretty much solo in Star Fox Adventures. One, they're desperate for money for upkeep since the main source of conflict in the Lilat system was taken care of by them. And two, they're a wingman down for what I consider to be a pretty well fleshed out reason. The story does flow between them, it just takes a little bit of digging and a little bit of selective path taking in Star Fox 64 to find all of the lore and all of the plot points that really make the situation at the beginning of Adventures make full sense. So despite everything being pretty neatly wrapped up, I should also talk about the Star Fox Adventures manual a little bit. In a similar vein to the beginning of Star Fox 64, there is a little exposition piece here, which I really feel like they should have put in the game itself, but whatever. This exposition piece doesn't really go into too much detail. The only significant point that we haven't discussed already is that they chalk Falco's departure up to just being bored, which, given the effort I just went through to present why I don't believe that's the case, you can imagine I disagree with that a little bit. There's also some information about the characters and NPCs, but that's about it for lore details. I'll have a link to the archive of the manual as well if you're like me and don't have it and want to take a look through it. So putting all of that together, we've basically caught up to the full Star Fox Adventures story in context. Why all this wasn't explicitly said in Star Fox 64 or Star Fox Adventures itself? Well, that probably all goes back to the fact that Star Fox Adventures wasn't originally a Star Fox game at all, but that's something others have already spoken about in probably more informative a way than I could. There is, however, something I want to call back to with the information we have now. The lore cheat tokens we've been getting and taking to the maze under the Warp Stone, I feel like those are a little more impactful now with the information we've just seen. There is one more lore token coming up, but it deals with future stuff. So these are the ones I feel like are a little more significant now. The first is the message about an enemy. His life force is strong, his existence is like a virus. I can hear his breath in every corner of space. He will not only use the evil hearts of others, but he can also corrupt those that are good. The second is called Message About a Friend. A friend who has left still cares about you. The bond of your friendship still remains. He will soon appear before you, and you should accept him with all of your heart. And finally, and this one isn't really relevant to the connection between the two games, but it is relevant in terms of what we've seen, this one is called Encouragement Message. I can see that you've matured into a strong leader. I'm always there with you. Never give up. Trust your instincts, my son. And that one, with the current context, that's why I said that almost made me cry. Anyway, with all that said, I hope you enjoyed this story, lore, information deep dive. This is a really weird, different type of video for me. I've never done anything like this before, so let me know if this kind of hyperfixating is something you'd like to see more of in the future. Again, this started off as just a playthrough of Star Fox 64, but then I totally went out of left field and made it into whatever this is. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you in whatever I decide to do next. Later.